Three quick reviews of three good books. Hello and welcome back to Bookish, and welcome to my review of three novels that I read recently and I wanted to talk to you about. I'll leave timestamps so you can go to the individual books if you want to. The first of those books is Cross Stitch by Jazmina Berrera, translated from Spanish by Christina McSweeney. This novel I thought was really good in terms of the way the construction of the novel actually works. You know, I did a video recently about books that I admired more than I enjoyed. This doesn't quite fit that category, but I would recommend this book as a book to be read because of the way in which the author writes the book, because the way in which the book is structured I thought was just so incredibly clever and powerful and worked to really enhance a story which is not necessarily all that unique a story. Which may sound like now I'm damning it with faint praise, but I don't mean to do that at all. So, Cross Stitch involves a friendship between three young Mexican women, Maya, Dalia, and Citlali. These three young women meet in school, they slowly become friends, and then their friendship becomes kind of the most important friendships in their lives for a brief period of time. And, you know, Berrera conveys the intensity of friendships when we're young and how important they seem, and also, I think, to a real extent, how fragile they are. The book opens up with Maya learning about the death of Citlali. That's literally chapter 1, so I don't consider that to be a spoiler. And then the book takes place in three different timelines. The first timeline is the timeline which I was going to call the timeline of the present, in which Maya has learned about the death of Citlali and her getting back in touch with Dalia, who she's become somewhat estranged from over the years, you know, since they were in school together and their friendship was closest, and then arranging for Citlali's memorial. The second timeline is Maya remembering their school days and how they became friends and how that worked out and the struggles they had and the things that bound them together. And the third timeline concentrates on a trip in which these three girls met in Paris on, you know, a vacation and spent time together. And interspersed between these three timelines, and literally knitting those timelines together, are pieces of information about embroidery and weaving and knitting and its history. And its history as a way in which women created communities amongst themselves, and ways in which they communicated, ways in which they were allowed to express themselves. And this is a really important theme in the novel, because these three young women are all involved in embroidery and knitting and things like that, and it's one of the things that's kind of the foundation of their friendship. And the way in which Berrera uses that information about knitting and embroidery to, you know, kind of weave this story together and to put the parts together, I just thought was kind of extraordinary. The only time we really see the three girls together as friends is during that period of time in which they're all three in France, all three in Paris for about 2 weeks. Otherwise, what we get are, you know, two of the characters interacting with one another to the exclusion of the third. And we don't often, one of the kind of unique things is when the characters interacting are Citlali and Dalia, we don't actually know what's happening because the story is told from the point of view of Maya. It is just a really inventive way of telling a story, which I think really does a great job of heightening and describing the importance of these friendships of these three young women. You know, it is a good book. It is not, you know, a book whose storyline was one that necessarily kept me interested all the way through, but the structure of the book I thought was excellent, and the way the author put it all together I thought was really admirable and excellent. The second book on my list is Nevada by Imogen Binnie. Imogen Binnie is a trans woman author, and this book was written, I want to say, more than a decade and a half ago. It was written long enough ago that a new edition has come out, and that's the e-edition I had, which includes an afterwards by the author. And I'm just going to tell you right up front, I really don't think that afterwards was necessary. And I really, if you get it, I would just kind of encourage you, depending on how you feel about the ending of the book, not to read it. If you get to the end of the book and you're satisfied with the novel as it is, do not read that afterward. If you get to the end of the book and you're frustrated with the way the book ends, maybe then consider reading the afterward. So this is a novel which focuses on one character. Her name is Maria, I believe, and she's a trans young woman living in Brooklyn. And her life is not a life that makes her happy necessarily. It is a difficult life. It is a frustrating life oftentimes, and she herself is just really, in lots of ways, an absolute mess. She works a job at a bookstore, which she's had for 9 years, but she's not all that committed to, and she, is not necessarily always the best employee, even though sometimes she is. She is in a relationship with a woman who, they've reached that point in their relationship where, the initial kind of spark, excitement is gone, and they've kind of settled into a routine. She transitioned, or had begun transitioning, many years before we pick up the story, and so by the time we meet Maria, she has, in many ways, I think, become more comfortable with that transition, in the sense that she doesn't think that people are looking at her and recognizing her as trans, that she's able to live her life more fully as a woman than, and to feel somewhat safer, though never safe, important thing to keep in mind, somewhat safer than before. And what we get then is really involved in this story and the telling this novel is, I think, real insight into the experience of trans women and how they make it all work and how transition affects them and all the pitfalls and problems they can run into. It is a book, I think, a novel, I think, that is instructive. I kind of hate to say that about any novel. It is not the job of trans authors or any author to educate people like me, straight cis white men, about the experience in order to create empathy and compassion. I should have that already. It does really give some insight into this, and so I found it to be enjoyable, and I found it to be insightful, and it did definitely make me aware of things I had not thought of before. Anyway, Maria is kind of a mess, and things kind of go wrong for her around the midpoint of the story, and she decides she's going to leave Brooklyn. She kind of more or less steals her ex's car, and she heads west. And when she heads west, she meets a young man named James in a small town in Nevada, whose name I can't remember, but has a patriotic sounding town. I want to say it's like America Falls or something like that. And she meets this young man named James, or Jibby, who is himself, we learned from the chapters in which, we see him before Maria shows up, we learn he himself is kind of questioning, asking lots of gender questions about himself and about his own sexuality. They try to work through those things. The two meet and they go on kind of an adventure to a casino in Reno, and I'll leave the rest of the plot there. This was just a delightful book. One of the things that I have found in reading Nevada is just how much fun this book is. It's not that Maria is admirable. It's not that things she wants to do are work out. It's not that her motivation is always good, but she is, a fun character to read about. And James, for all of his many problems and his many things about him that are not admirable, is an interesting character to read about. And I just really, really liked the book. I thought it was sweet at times. I thought it was painful at times. And I really, really liked the book. And I hope more people will read it. The third book I read recently was a book I read for the Women's Prize, and that's In Defense of the Act by Effie Black. This was probably the big surprise novel on the Women's Prize long list from a really small publisher whose name I just forgot, and so small that I don't believe copies of it were available in the United States. I read an e-copy of it, which, by the way, in the e-copy they corrected the problem that many people had who got the physical copy with the font, and the font being kind of making the reading experience less pleasant. This book involves a kind of approaching, let's say, middle-aged woman named Jessie, who grew up in really difficult circumstances. She has always known that she was gay. She comes out when she's 16, and then she goes into an area of research in the sciences in which she's researching essentially spiders, a very specific type of spider, among whom the females, under really certain circumstances, essentially commit suicide. And what a lot of the novel focuses on is this idea that our character has that suicide might sometimes be the right option. Now, you know, trigger warnings for all kinds of open, frank discussions about suicide and that idea from the very beginning. And I'm not trying to promote that idea, but it is central to the novel. And suicide appears frequently in the novel. And really this is, in some ways, the beginning chapters are just a meditation by Jesse on this topic. You know, is suicide ever the best decision? Are there circumstances in which a person's suicide is beneficial, or at least does less harm than staying alive might? You know, we might think about assisted suicide in cases where people are terminally ill and they're racking up huge, medical debts, as they would here in the United States, and they're forcing their family members to kind of live through this prolonged nightmare. You know, would that be an example, you know, of a suicide which was justified? Anyway, our character has all these ideas, all these thoughts, and then we, you know, and she's kind of meditating on those things through the first few chapters, and then about, I don't know, 2/5 of the way through, the novel really becomes a novel in which we're looking at her family, her father, her mother, her brother, her sister, and then the woman she has a relationship with. And we're really looking at all these characters, and what it really becomes, I think, more accurately, is a book about trauma response and how different people deal with traumas, and how those traumas leave really deep, you know, scars on people, sometimes which they can't overcome, sometimes which kind of determine in lots of ways the path in which they follow in the future. And, you know, I think it asks some really interesting questions. Now, of the 3 books I've mentioned in this video, this is probably the one that I am the least, excited about. The one that I'm the least likely to recommend. 1, because of its subject matter, but 2, I feel like it became a little bit samey, as a lot of other books, as it moves on. You know, the voice of the author, which is really present, and I think a real kind of selling point of the novel in its first 2/5, when it's, you know, this meditation on life and suicide and these bugs, etc. I thought it was really good, and I enjoyed it. That voice kind of goes away as we see this kind of recitation of things about her family and about her life and about her motivation. And, you know, what it kind of boils down to at the end, I think, is something that doesn't feel as revolutionary, doesn't feel as risky as the early chapters would indicate. I don't want to give away, you know, how that all works out, because that would be a big spoiler, I think. And if you're interested in reading the book, you know, I definitely think you should. It's about 200 pages, maybe just a little over. It wouldn't take you long to read it. Even I read it in 2, you know, days in 100-page shots. So if you want, if you think it's something you want to read, if it sounds interesting to you, by all means read it. It would not be a book that I would necessarily choose of the books I've read so far to go on to the Women's Prize shortlist. But there's definitely something there. There's definitely some good writing, an interesting voice, an interesting take. I just don't think it sustains it all the way through the book. Anyway, there you go. There are my 3 reviews of books I've read in the last week or so. If you've read these books, or if you haven't, I look forward to your comments in the comment section below. And as always, thank you for watching.